my God, Chris, I think we're here. I think I did it. I can see my mic's talking. Can you say a few words?
A few words.
That's good enough for me. I can see your mic talking. Guys, let us know in chat if anything seems wonky or funny or whatever. And Chris, take it away.
I mean, I'm gonna have to take your word for the fact that we're actually running because on the website right now, or on the YouTube channel, I do not see anything. So I'm gonna hope that that's happening. And yeah, there
Everything
we
looks
go.
good.
There we go.
Everything
Now
looks
we're up
good.
and running. Everything's good. It's just that delay, right? It's that delay.
Look, guys, I had to format my computer. I had to rebuild everything from scratch, and of course, obviously, my usual regular, not so mental sharpness in play. But I think we did it. I think we're good. So, like I said, guys, if the audio sounds too funny or something, let me know. But otherwise, we're good to go.
Yeah. Okay. You're not so your mental sharpness. I like like how you just threw yourself to the wolves right off the beginning.
That's right.
Okay, so hey guys, how's it going? We are definitely up and running now. I can see everything's happening here, so I feel more comfortable now to start things off here. How's it going, man?
I'm not too bad. How about you?
You've been busy this week.
It doesn't stop, man. Life. I'm back into regular rotation, back into my 8 hours a day schedule, and I'm so out of that loop that it's really messing me up as far as like making content for the channel and even just playing games has slowed down. So I got to like reintegrate myself back into normal life at least for
That's
the
so
next few
sad.
weeks.
Ryan hasn't worked like a full-time job in like the last year.
It's been
He
so
just
weird.
he sits in his truck all day. It's really
I
it's
sit in an
really
office all day.
yeah.
Now I
Or your
don't.
anyways, regardless, I think a lot of people would kill to have your day-to-day job, and he hates it. He talks nothing but shit about it.
Yeah,
um
grass is always
so
greener.
oh, yeah, isn't that true? Hey, so just off the top here, guys, thanks for joining us.
You see this?
um
You see this? You guys can see right now. I'm blinking the Saints and Sinners PSVR 2 giveaway. Chris, should we mention that?
That's where I was going with this. Thank you, Mr. fucking interrupter. Oh shit. Well, just there goes the demonetized. Yeah, I was just gonna say, first and foremost, guys, thanks for joining us. Hit the like button if you wouldn't mind. That's always just a thing, whether you're watching this live or you're coming in after. It just helps us with the algorithm. Speaking of which, we hit 25,000. So thank you again. I just want to put that out there. We'll probably do an official post, but just thank you so much to all of you guys who have been around here, old and new. Especially when it was when it was Shughead Gaming going back there. Um, got basically 2,000 subs here with Ryan so far, and it's been easily the most fun 2,000 subs that I've ever had. So I just especially shout out to my boy here. It's been a blasty blast.
My
Guys, yeah.
boy.
Saints and Sinners Chapter 2
I'm glitchy.
Retribution. You've probably seen we've got yeah, you're glitchy, but
Ignore me.
I'm just ignoring you.
Yep.
If you haven't seen, we've got a review up for that and a side-by-side comparison. Ryan's also working on a side-by-side for the PSVR 1 version to the PSVR 2 version of the first title. So keep an eye out on that. Like he said, he's been struggling to get a schedule in check here. So there's that. But we are going to be giving away a couple of codes to the for the PSVR 2 version, an NA and an EU code a
Yep.
little bit later in the show. So if you guys are still holding out for that title, just stay in chat. We will be putting it on the screen, not in chat. So if you're copy and pasters, don't have to worry about that. But just heads up, it's coming at you. Salvador, love you. Thank you so much. Your secret family now. Salvador, we love you. Yeah, so I've had more time in my hands, so I guess I'll start off with the fact that I've been playing VR this week.
I
I've
mean,
been
so have
playing
I. I think we're playing the same game here.
kind of sorta. I can't stop playing GT7 and Resident Evil 8. That's a thing. I've obviously put a bunch of time into Saints and Sinners Chapter 2. I think that is just a absolutely brilliant PSVR 2 port. I think it is a title that is an interesting crossroads. I think that we're getting into VR because for like the last year and a half, we've been talking on this show specifically about kind of what we hoped PSVR 2 would bring to the premium VR scene, and how we hoped it would be able to go hand in hand with PC, at least to a certain degree, in order to give developers, more incentive to kind of push those graphical boundaries and give us the bigger games that we want. and not just being Quest
Right.
as the only way to make money. Because we've talked to these developers, they don't like having to neuter their titles either. And so this is just a really fun time, I think, to be getting into console VR or VR in general, because yeah, the version that we got for Saints and Sinners is so beautiful. It's such a they spent so much time optimizing that, and they really, I think I mean, for it to get within this close to the PC and bettering it in a few spots just speaks to the optimization that Skydance did on it.
Hmm.
It gives me hope for Behemoth coming up. But it's just, again, it's just the fact that it is at least arguments aside, at least being comparable to the PC version is fantastic for premium VR, and I'm really excited about that. You've been playing a little bit of Vertigo too. I know we can't talk too much about it, but I will say for those of you with PCs, yeah, PC VR is not dead, and there's goodness coming your way. Um, but I said I can't stop playing GT7, Ryan. I have a problem. I can't stop playing. I literally get on the PlayStation to review something, and I end up jumping into GT7.
Well, stop it, man. I mean, that what is this? February 24th? Get over it. That's last month's news.
I
Um,
can't help it. It's so addictive, man. Just cruising through the courses. Oh, so good. It's so good. It feels like taking a holiday. But guys, my Resident Evil 8 Village review, the much delayed review, mostly due to my voice that was out of whack there, is coming to you guys tomorrow. And so please check that out if you will. I love that game. It's another game I can't stop playing. That's the other problem. I Resident Evil. Sorry, I will go back to Saints and Sinners to finish off the last few missions in Retribution, but I think I'm going to start that over again on the hardest difficulty once I beat Resident Evil 8 Village, because it is just, mwah, it is premium VR deliciousness.
it really is. I mean, I've only played. I mean, I played the PC version a while back. I guess I played the PC version a little bit, doing my side by side, and the versions are both very comparable. I do agree with you that the PSVR 2 version is the better version to play, and I think that's largely due to, well, the haptics is obviously, but the SSD in regards to some of the loading and popping you see. Um,
Oh, sure you want to? Are you sure you
I
want to
do,
get?
because I've gone back to it and done it again, and it's there. It's this.
No,
It's just there, and
like,
it's so repeatable. So I guess, for the PSVR fanboys, which is, I guess, is the majority of this chat, it really is, at this point in time, it is the cleanest version of the game to play. Factor in the HDR and the haptics, and it really is the best version. We are nitpicking here, but it's true. It is. I've gone back in and tested it again just because of all the PC fanboys kind of attacking the video, and I do want to get better and kind of learn and make these side by sides more and more and more quote unquote professional. So in doing my research and going back, I was like, yeah, this is the PSVR 2 version is cleaner. It's just like I
now,
said, go.
to be fair for PC guys, all right, and I mean, and we read all the comments that has been made, and you know this is the tough thing, right? The side by side comparisons are also done. They're like a snapshot of like a moment
Excuse me.
in these versions. Like there's been two patches on the PSVR
Hmm. Hmm.
since those side by sides, and I had it uninstalled the PC version, but I'm sure it's also had some patches. So, I mean, like Ryan had said, we think the pop in could be the dependency or the ability to depend on the SSD of the PlayStation 5. But again, obviously, we're making, kind of educated guesses that could be happening. It could just be a lack of optimization. But
Seems
at the
like
end of
it's
the,
the SSD.
I mean,
In the homework I've done, it really does seem like it's the SSD is the linchpin behind that.
yeah. And I mean, it makes a lot of sense that it would be that, but it could also, it honestly, like, bottom line, without getting into the nitty gritty, because we're not Digital Foundry, we don't pretend to be. We try to comment on what we see, like we try to give you the gamers kind of point of view of it, and at the end of the day, the PC version just seems like it hasn't been optimized as much. Whether it can be optimized more, given the fact that
Hmm.
it has to scale, we don't know.
And it's minor.
But it,
It's not
but at
game
the end of
breaking
but at
popping.
the end of yeah,
That's, I'm
at
not
the end of the
attacking
day,
it for it, but it's
no,
it's there. It's noticeable, and yeah, that's
it
all I'm saying.
it didn't run as clean for me, even on my 3080. It just didn't. And I the PSVR 2 version just felt very, very polished, a little more polished,
And just so
and
the
it felt
PC guys don't think I'm hating, like you said, they're getting Vertigo 2 next week, and what I've played so far, if you enjoyed Vertigo 1 like I did, you're gonna probably enjoy Vertigo 2. So I mean, that's all I'll say. It's not ruining anything, but that's not coming to PSVR 2 if it is anytime soon.
what.
So yeah,
Yeah, well, I mean, you spoke to the developer, and it sounds like it's kind of like he's still one guy, and a
yeah.
lot of it has to do with how it's received on PC. I don't think I'm ruining anything by just kind of reiterating what the trailer had kind of said. Is its claim of being a it uses the term half-like. I think
Oh, he's
um,
embraced that fully.
yeah, I would in this version, absolutely. It really feels it feels more Half-Life 3 than even Alex did in kind of just the vibe that it's got going on to it. So anyways, that's something to look forward to in the channel next week for a complete review. Um what else have I been playing? You know what? I have been jumping around the PSVR 2 library a little bit, and that's the other thing that I love about that I'm enjoying at least being on the console as well or again is that I mean, obviously you can jump games quickly on PC too, but it's just really easy to jump smoothly in between games on the PS 5 and just not have to really worry about anything. And so, I mean, I jumped into Synth Riders. Man, I've been playing Synth Riders for years. I can't say I think it screams PSVR 2. It's a little sharper. It's got a little more snazziness, but that was just sweet. I jumped into Drums Rock. That was fun. I jumped into some Moss. One thing I want to talk about PSVR 2, and I'm asking the chat too because I don't know if Ryan's played enough of these titles that I'm going to mention to comment.
How
I
dare
have
you?
noticed I have noticed that the PSVR 2 does have one irritating bug that I hope they patch soon. And that is I have noticed in many, many titles, if I am say bumped up against a stationary object. Let's say it's like a desk in RE8 or even in Resident Evil sometimes if I'm up against like a table or something and I'm looking around, I can kind of feel the camera shake a little. Like the world moves a little bit with the headset, like it kind of like doesn't know what to
I
do
just
all
enjoy you doing this the whole time.
what it's doing, but that's what it's doing, man. And I notice it on Drums Rock. I notice it. The biggest example would be Moss Book 2, being the fact that it's a static environment that you're just kind of looking around. I noticed that, like, if I kind of move a little bit, the world kind of shakes a little bit.
I
Like
know
it's not.
exactly what you're talking about. I noticed it in Star Wars as well, where if I tilted my head like this, if I just like tilted my head, it wouldn't just tilt my head, but it would actually kind of push a little bit of the world into frame, like it was moving as I was doing it. And yeah, I was kind of hoping it was game specific thing, but from what you're saying, it sounds like more of a
No, I
headset
really
thing.
don't think it is. I mean, I've heard some issues. I just stopped doing that. uh, I would say that I've heard that there's some Unity issues with the PSVR 2 that are unique to Unity, but I'm seeing it in games that aren't Unity, like the RE engine, for example. Again, most games when I'm just like moving around in the game world, I never notice it. But I am noticing it a little bit in games where I'm a little more stationary, and it feels like something. It seems something software related.
Hmm.
Um, so I that's just a thing that I've noticed. I've been jumping around games, but I don't know it's neither here nor there. It hasn't been game breaking. I mean, speaking of games that kind of that moved when you shook your head, there was a problem that I had been running into even after a couple patches with Light Brigade 2. Didn't run into it on PC or Quest. It was PSVR 2 only. I would move my head and the world would just tilt slightly. It was driving me nuts. I was talking to the developer. He's like, "Oh, it's only when you're aiming, right?" I'm like, "No, it's happening all the time." And he's like, "I don't know." And I'm like, "Now I'm feeling gaslit because I'm positive I'm seeing this." Um, and I was like, I didn't even know what to say to him anymore. I didn't want to be a complaining YouTuber. Uh, and when he did the first big patch and he bumped up the resolution and stuff on the game, I was like, oh, it's gonna be fixed. No, it's not fixed. But I
Hmm.
will say, last week he put a small patch in. Don't know what it was, but it fixed the problem. And that game now is for me on PS4 is just dialed right in.
Sweet.
Yeah. So I mean that just was really nice to see that patch come in. And I mean, and that was a game specific issue, but
Yeah, I'm looking forward to kind of like, now that I've gotten some things out of the way here, I've got a few more like videos coming out. And with Vertigo, but I kind of do plan on kind of revisiting these games I haven't had a chance to yet. Diving back into After the Fall and a few other games that have gotten the PSVR 2 treatment, but I just haven't had time to get to in favor of the new stuff as opposed to the stuff we've seen before.
Well,
So
it keeps coming, right? Yeah, exactly. I mean, tomorrow is
Galaxy Carts,
Galaxy Carts. I was like, what? Where'd that come from? It looks a lot like Dash Dash World.
it does. I agree.
Like in when you see the nicer looking footage, which I would imagine is running either PC or PSVR 2, because it's coming to Quest as well.
Womp womp.
There's older gameplay footage on YouTube, and it looked rough and it looks slow. That's my biggest concern.
I'm pretty sure I played this game actually like years ago on PC, but it was like early access. And I remember, if I remember the right thing, it played all right. It didn't feel like anything too special. But even if that was the case, it was also like 2 years ago. If I'm thinking of the right game.
It looks polished from like the recent trailer. I'm still concerned about being fast enough. And of course, kart racing,
And wheel support. I want to know if it has wheel support, which they haven't answered that question yet.
Oh, I don't. Has
Which,
anybody?
No.
I'm trying to, because I don't think Dash Dash added wheel support.
Yes, it Dash. No, did that? I know. What was the one that Ivanovich Games gave us for PSVR?
I know
that one did, because you could one hand it was a move with one hand and drive with one hand with the wheel, and you could still do the thing. It was. I mean, the game didn't look the greatest, but I'll give them credit for just trying to put every single locomotion option in there for a vehicle as possible. It was cool.
The thing about doing a kart game though is that the difference between having it be like amazing and just another kart game, there's definitely there's a recipe to it that most people don't get. Dash Dash World, especially on its more advanced courses, was actually getting into like Mario Kart territory. Like it was starting to be something really special.
Hey, it's coming to PSVR 2 at some point in time.
Yeah, well, they went really quiet, and so that's unfortunate. And I don't know. We'll see what this other kart game has in store. It's almost shadow dropping, so that's never a good thing. And they don't seem to not want to give us codes.
Well, and it's from VR Kiwi too, which has typically given us smaller experiences. That Viking Days experience comes to mind, right? Which I actually didn't hate for what it was, but it's not like it's little like 2-minute mini games. And they did something else as well that I don't think was terrible, but it wasn't by any stretch. Like it wasn't pushing any boundaries for VR. So I don't want to slag them, but so far their history has been much smaller experiences. Like this is easily looks like to be their biggest game, which is awesome. I mean, their games must have hopefully sold well. I mean, this is their third or fourth title, I think. So I mean, maybe there's the next Servios, and this is their first of many games before they ultimately fall. I'm just kidding, Servios. Hopefully, I mean, I shouldn't say. I was mixing things up. Yeah, Servios, get shit together.
Well, I mean, the fact that Aliens,
right?
And someone corrected me in a VR group that I was in because I'd forgotten about this, that Aliens is actually a hybrid title.
Yes.
It's going flat as well.
Yep.
Which I have two quick thoughts. My first thought is sweet. That means like it's got a budget behind it because like it's not just VR. It's also not going to look like probably like one of their more cartoony VR titles again because of that. The flip side is I just really hope that they do the VR port justice.
Right. I mean, it's Servios. You'd think they would.
They get VR. It's just that it's going flat. It's a single player game. It's probably going to be graphically impressive. You know what I'm getting at here.
They just need to take a step back away from making things too arcadey. And The Walking Dead is the perfect example of that. We both liked it, but it still had that kind of like arcadiness to it. That quick pick up and play, bash some skulls in, move on. Levels kind of repeat. It was very formulaic in its level design, where it was just quick, like 15 minutes bouts of action before it forced you to go through a level at a certain pace and then move on.
Which makes a lot of sense though if you remember it's.
Oh no, I'm not saying it was
going to be a Left 4 Dead 4-player. So I think that they switched directions and kind of had to work with what they
but sure, but if you look at the history of the studio, like all their games typically do have like an arcadey aspect to it, a very easy pick up and play, not a ton of depth, I guess is kind of what I'm saying. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm just saying typically their games are more pick up and play. And I kind of hope for Aliens they do get away from that a bit and make it just a little more of a like a first person, like a storied campaign or something along those lines where it's not just
they say they're doing right. So they have.
We don't know what it is. I mean,
they confirmed single player campaign.
Okay, then I guess we do know what it is.
They did confirm that. and that because it shocked me that
Should be a
like
massive. Whenever they reveal this thing, it should be massive because they were going to reveal this last July, and we haven't heard anything since. So hopefully, in that time, they really put some stuff together.
I mean them taking on a single player campaign like story based franchise like Aliens and the level of quality which people are going to expect, especially considering that Servios probably knows that most people expect an Alien game to suck. Like they haven't had the best track record.
Yeah.
Um, this for them to deliver, Servios is going to be leveling up hard as a studio. Like they're really going to be taking things to the next level. I mean, in some ways, it's actually an odd studio for
Yeah, I mean,
they're calling themselves now 20th century studios or something is what they're going under the name now that Disney bought them, but it's just an odd for them to get that franchise. Good for them, I guess. Getting back to quickly to we were talking about GT7 and racing with kart coming out. I saw that here that what was it here? Steve Nardo in chat here asked if I thought that the success with GT7 we might get more racing games since the OG lacked in racing games. Absolutely, and not just because of the success of GT7, though in some ways GT7 might scare off some developers because it set such a bar. The OG got very few racing games because racing games like just traditionally just like were very hard to pull off graphically with all the physics and the speed and the draw distance, all things that were like were like really hard for the old PS4 to pump out in VR. I mean, Dirt was a great example of it, but it was predominantly a single player game without, with the exception of some small rallycross courses. GT Sport, we saw it was too hard for them; they couldn't do it. Drive Club VR visually suffered heavily in order to get it out. Wipeout was amazing, and kind of a freak of nature. But
and then there's touring cards and the other.
Yeah. Now, to answer your question more directly, Dirt Rally, which was I think most people would say the best racing game on PSVR for real vehicles, was made by Codemasters, and Codemasters has gone big time now. They've done Dirt Rally 2 since then. They also brought F122 to PC finally last year, which was a big move for them to bring that into VR. And Codemasters has acquired the WRC license, so VR hopefully and rally racing is going to become much more common because I think was it Clipton or Krypton or something like that. The developer who had the license for WRC before didn't care about VR. So I think, yes, we are going to see a lot more VR games coming to the PSVR 2 for racing just because they can. And I think a lot of those are going to be coming from Codemasters just because they seem to be committed to VR. Now, here's the question for you, Ryan. Do you think we'll see a GT8?
Nope. They take way too long in between games.
I mean, PS5.
I don't think so. They take so long, and I do think they're still very much building GT7.
Well, it has microtransactions in it too, right? So they can just keep dropping content because they drop a new car that costs a couple $1,000,000. You don't get it.
Yeah,
it's just available to buy.
And even considering how GT Sport worked in regards to how much DLC and paid DLC they dropped for that too, I would assume they're going to follow the same format. That being said, I would hope to see some competition in there, whether it's something surprising like Need for Speed in VR, or obviously a more arcadey that's not going to go for the Gran Turismo audience, or we know was it F22 F1?
It would be F123 would be the next one.
That's right. That's what's mixing up.
I've seen some stuff.
Yeah, it's already in VR, right? Like for PC. So hopefully maybe there's a port in mind. It really depends. A lot of things depend on sales, right? We don't know how far the PSVR is selling. So no studio is going to commit to like, we're bringing our game to VR unless they know their game's going to be a success, right? So everyone's watching. Whatever these first numbers are that Sony puts out, and not estimates. I don't want to hear like, oh, we estimated it sold like 200,000 headsets. I want to hear from Sony when this thing's a success, like how many it sold and how long. Because if it sells 1 million headsets, in the next 6 months, well, to me, that's a big step in the right direction from where it was compared to the PSVR 1. If it sold obviously more than that, and we see this trend of people actually, committing to PlayStation VR and that platform, then we'll see more. It's just that simple. But right now we are in this weird time where VR has proven to not be a guarantee. So a lot of studios especially ones that even got burned last generation, aren't just going to pull the trigger because the new tech's available. They're waiting to see if that new tech is viable in regards to making their making money. I mean, we're kind of out of that phase of these developers just dumping money into VR and then hoping for returns. They're now expecting returns. So until they can guarantee that, or Sony gives them money, I don't think they'll dip their toes just yet. So hopefully we get numbers sooner than later in regards to sales, and hopefully those numbers are good.
It sucks that we have to those numbers though. Like we say, we have to get them basically from Sony. I mean, I think this is a problem. Period. In the when it comes to headsets or consoles sold in this market, is that there doesn't seem to be a real reliable third party that goes. It's actually tracking this and being able to say
No, you can't
it always
trust anything out there.
it always has to come from Sony themselves. And I can't see unless it sells like hotcakes. I can't see Sony
Well, that's the hopes.
giving sales numbers until the end of, say, holiday of 23. I mean, if you've been paying attention, I have heard the reports that a lot of PSVR 2 headsets have been returned, and in some cases outselling or out returning the sales. But again, it's like that's not confirmed. It's usually from people that I think might be like hating on the PSVR 2, so it's really hard to necessarily know what's up with that. I also, again, that could be completely normal for something as what's the word I'm looking for? Not volatile, but just VR. You don't, if you're new to VR, you don't know what it is till you put a headset on.
Yeah.
And so I think you're going to see a higher rate of return on that. And also, again, not just you're not going to know how amazing VR is, but you're also your expectations. You see a lot of people going, like even GT7 is amazing. It's not as sharp as I thought it would be based on the trailers. It's like if you don't know what VR is, you don't have that expectation in check for like where VR is actually at still.
Mhm.
Especially when Sony's pushing 4K, 4K, 4K. That's actually 2K on each eye, and so it's an expectation thing that
2 plus
bugs me.
2 is 4, Chris. That's how that math works. Yeah, so I mean, we saw it earlier. Space Denizen brought it up, and so did I lost it now. We're going back too far. Johnny B as well, where they're talking about upgrade. We would like to see an upgraded version of Wipeout or Trackmania or Sprint Vector. And this kind of segues into our conversation in a way, in that there are rumors now circling around Meta's headsets or platform, whatever you want to say. Basically, they're bringing like a Games Pass-esque type subscription for the service. And my understanding, I believe you can probably correct me on this one, Chris, is that it is a couple games a month you get for free, and as long as you keep the subscription, you have access to those games forever. And it kind of got with PSVR 2 and the lack of PSVR 1 ports coming to the headset, we kind of the conversation came up like, is this viable? Like should Sony be looking at doing something similar for their headset in regards to PS plus VR, where you get access to X amount of games plus one free game a year or something along those lines? And like, do we want that? Is it something people would pay for? Is it something VR needs? We just I'm really curious to see exactly what Meta's planning, because it's if we're paying for the service and it's like garbage games a year, because I guess one of the things with these non-VR services, rather Games Pass, I guess, and PS Plus, is that you get the online service and the games are kind of a bonus, I guess. Whereas with these platforms, you already have the online. The online's already either baked in with your PS Plus or free on PC or Meta. So if you're just paying for free games and the games you get are either random or from a small selection, like, is that worth it for people? Like, there's just and we can talk about Vive Part 2, but
I think you have to look at each situation
for sure.
In kind of like a bit of a silo. Like Ryan and I were talking about this the other day on the phone. This is where this came from. And if you go back to say like the days of PS3, I believe, I would guess it would be, online was free, but Xbox was charging, and Xbox Live was a far better service than what PlayStation was offering.
Mm-hmm.
It just worked better. The party system, everything about it was just better. Sony felt like they were a generation behind, and then eventually now they started offering a Plus membership, they started charging the same as basically they started to offer the same kind of content offering that Microsoft had been doing for a little while, and that also included this like Microsoft's Games with Gold and Sony's PS Plus, where you got 2 or 3 titles. For a while there, they were giving a couple of PS4 games and a couple PS3 games, and then that became PS4 and PS5, and so on and so forth. We saw a couple VR titles offered. I remember like Drive Club, for example, stands out
Rush
as
of
a
Blood
title that
was in there. They gave us Saints and Sinners at one point in
so
time.
they dabbled in it, but they never made it a consistent thing. Now, again, looking at say Steam, it's you don't pay for any online service there, but there's also not really much of an online service other than you can connect. Like that's the reason like Discord became such a thing because like group chat was never guaranteed. In whatever situation it might be, like Steam had some kind of a chat system. But anyways, it was never where it was never nearly as curated or polished, and so that's what it is. But so specifically talking about like kind of consoles, um, and I'm including say like the Quest as a console headset. Um, Looking at their situation, they're talking about doing this. That's Ryan and I were saying, is there going to be pushback on that? Because I feel like if they just offer it as a service where you pay X number of dollars a month and you get a couple of games that they decide to offer, I just don't know if that's going to necessarily work for them, because I think one of the reasons that the membership has worked on Microsoft and Sony is that it was never based solely around getting games. It was that you're getting the online experience, and you're getting like you're paying for this for the proper hosting and servers and parties, and so you're paying for that service, and the games are bonus, like you said. And I
Hmm.
think and I feel like that is the way to go, because then people still complain if they think they got crap games one month, but at least they don't feel like they've got nothing,
Right.
which is where if you have, if, like, unless Meta chooses to do something where it's a selection of games and you get to pick one or two a month, that would be another way to go. I think given the not great matchmaking and party system on the Quest 2. It's not bad, but it's not great. I feel like there's too many times I've gotten into parties and you can't hear someone,
Hmm.
or it's just and it seemed to get really cluttered with Facebook, and it was like, am I in the Facebook group or am I in a meta group? And I'm sure it's simpler than I made it out to be, but for someone who jumps headsets, I was just like, every time I went to do a party, I'm like, oh, this doesn't seem intuitive. And so if they were to up that service and pay for it. Now, Meta, I mean, it's very obvious that they need money. It's been all over the media.
What?
They've been laying off. They've been raising the price of headsets. They need revenue in their VR or
Oh, the price
XR.
of the headsets is dropping, Chris. The Pro's now $1,000.
Yeah, well, yeah, good point. Good point. It was too expensive to start with, but regardless, I mean, it was priced above probably cost anyway. Um, they need money. This makes a lot of sense to me. That everyone else, like if they want to be playing that ecosystem, Microsoft and Sony both have revenue streams of their monthly subscription service to play online and get games. It seems to me almost insane that Meta wouldn't follow suit with that. Fun fact: they're keeping the Oculus name. I called that
I
shit.
know. Isn't that
Freaking
awesome?
told you. I told you. Remember, I told you. I've said, I'm like, you just wait. They're gonna bring Meta. They're gonna bring Oculus back. For those of you, they're bringing Oculus is gonna be their publishing side for games now.
Oculus Studios. They're making games.
Well, yeah. So all these studios that they've bought, like Big Box and Beat Games and such, they're all gonna now probably be under Oculus Publishing. So that's cool. At least we can now say Oculus and not be wrong all the time. But anyways, I don't know. I'm just saying on the meta side of things, it makes sense for a revenue stream.
Hmm.
Does it make sense for gamers? Um,
It's tough.
I
I
don't,
mean, like I
I
said,
don't know.
if they
I
can
don't
pick
know.
from a pool, it's different. Like we don't know exactly, but if like I said, if they're just giving one or two randoms per month, and once again, you kind of have to know ahead of time, what you're getting. Are you getting brand new games? Are you getting access to like two any free games per month, or is it specific ones? And then if that's the case, you have to know in advance, because if you know that um Saints Retribution is coming out for the Quest 2 like next month, hypothetically, obviously. Is that one you can wait for, or do you save that your free game for that? Like, there is obviously huge questions around this.
Yeah, I know it becomes you're right, it becomes a problem. I mean, it gets, or at least it gets confusing, especially when if you pay attention to all the pushback, it's like every few months, like people are raging against Microsoft and Sony, saying that like
Oh
this
yeah.
month and that month um, you know, was not what they wanted game wise and this and that again. But the fact that they bundle it in a service that also gives you, say, you also get additional discounts on games, like buying games, you know, like PlayStation loves to do it with new releases where you save a few bucks if you're a member, and we saw that in VR on PSVR a lot. And I feel like that just, it has to be that way. It has to be a service that has more than just that you get a couple games.
Hmm.
I mean, the most comparable, well, in fact, actually, before I get into that, let's just say on the meta side of things, I feel like if they're going to do it, that's the way it has to be done. Now, not to go too far off topic, but I know some people have talked about, say, like, would Meta, or any, let's just say Meta, keep it simple, would do a Game Pass situation where you would pay, and it could be paired up with what we've been talking about, with like a subscription service for where you get a couple games and online, and you just pay extra, and then you get access to a catalog of games, kind of like a Game Pass, um, or on its own.
Hmm.
Um, I don't know. I Before I answer this, because I think I've been the one that's like been very passionate about this. I mean, the thumbnail art alone kind of puts it right out there what I think about it. But what do you think about Game Passes? Like, say, Microsoft's Game Pass. I mean, I know you pay for it.
Yeah, I mean, I pay for it, barely use, but I do pay for Games Pass. I guess my kid plays for Minecraft. I think for gamers, they're great. A Games Pass is undeniably one of the best deals out there. If you're a gamer, if you play more than 2 or 3 games a month and you have Games Pass, you're laughing because everything Xbox exclusive comes to that. Which, I mean, in translation, if everything Oculus, Meta exclusive came to that headset, that'd be pretty crazy. But and then obviously 100 plus games that they change over every few months, with under the idea that yeah, games are kind of more of a disposable medium in regards to play it and then move on, minus anything online. So I think for gamers, like, it's an undeniable deal. You can't not deny the value in that, especially if you do, if you spend the time gaming. Now, reports are now coming out that developers are suffering because of this, and reports are that Games Pass is actually hurting these developers and killing their game sales, and they're not, and the returns from Game Pass aren't, they don't warrant the development costs of the game, and
I think for some of them, it warrants the development cost of the game. I mean, I think I've heard Microsoft is fairly generous with their upfront cost, but I think the problem that developers are seeing is what the reports are, is that it's killing their game though. And so it's kind of like, is it worth it to just kind of like, they kind of blow their load on Xbox Game Pass, and then it's just it's a dead game after that. And that's what they're concerned about. Is that I think that they're getting enough to cover their costs. That's, I think, for a lot of
I've heard
developers.
some complain about costs and that they're not, that they are, their estimates say that they wouldn't have made as much had they not gone through Game Pass. I have to find the stories, but I know they're
Oh
out there.
yeah. I mean, of course. I think a lot of games that are going to Game Pass and are going to, say, like Sony's, obviously they've got a Game Pass competitor, but not really, because they're not committing to it with all the day one exclusives, and it just doesn't have quite the quality um, as Microsoft. But again, Sony. I think Sony just muddied the waters with the way that they tried to roll that out,
Hmm.
and relaunch kind of the whole Sony streaming thing. But um, I think that Microsoft, I think especially, you look at it, a lot of the titles that have gone there struggled, maybe, and this made a lot of money sense for them. I think you see that very obviously in the games with gold and the PlayStation Plus. These are games that have either struggled or made their money, like kind of like they'd kind of run their course, and now it was, grabbing that last bit of money to kind of give it to the masses. I mean, like for example, looking at this year's or this month's Sony game, amongst others, you got Battlefield, was it 2044 or whatever the heck it is. The game tanked. It tanked, and this is a way to just try to get it. It's basically free to play, essentially, at least for subscribing members. To answer the question specifically, I'm not a fan of Game Pass. At all. It scares me a little bit actually, because I feel like I get that a lot of people are like, I can get so much, like it's like, especially Microsoft, it's like if you like Halo and you like Gears of War and you like Forza, like they're three big single parties and they're day one exclusives, like all it takes is a couple of games a year that you want, like Squanch Games launched High on Life. It's
Yep.
like on Day Pass, Game Pass day one. It's like all it needs is a couple of games and the service paid for itself all year.
Yep.
I don't have I'm not saying that as a gamer it's not a great service, but I think it's short-sighted because and I mean that's just the nature of the beast. But like you look at Spotify, Netflix, and pretty much all of these streaming services now are starting to cut costs because they're going, they're not making money. They have cash flow. They're not making money. It's like the mobile market on games on the phone. It's a race to the bottom. It got to the point in the mobile market where the only ones making money with this like race to being free to play were this like top 1% or 0.5%, where the rest of games were making nothing. And then when like a game comes out and it's like, no, $14. Like we put a lot of time and money in this game. People are like, $14.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
This is bullshit. And that really worries me. When I look at VR, I mean, people already have this, like they already think VR games like should be cheap. In some cases they should be, but I'm just concerned about like the perceived value that it brings to the industry.
I think I
Um,
mean it's two sides, and I don't disagree with what you're saying at all. I mean, like I said, you see with Netflix and stuff now, where we're seeing, especially Netflix, in regards to dialing back their content because they just can't, produce what they need to, or at least with the budgets they have to, and give back with what they're making, if that makes any sense. The difference here, I guess, would be the fact that with these Game Passes, is a majority of these games aren't being published by Microsoft. Obviously, some are, but a majority aren't. So, I think there's a way, just on the VR front to bring in the service with minimal costs, I guess, in regards to that service itself. Now, unfortunately, because you have the service, you would then expect to, obviously reap, what else is it going to give? What games are
are you
coming next?
talking about? Are you talking about
I'm
a
bouncing back
game?
and forth. Yeah,
Well, I mean, because you have to be careful that we keep it clear to these people whether you're talking about, say, just
I'm
like
saying
a
giving
month.
back, like whether it's Games Pass or Netflix, like the money earned
No, but
is
I'm
going
saying
back
okay.
like
But what
to the
I'm saying is
user in some way. It's not
you're talking about a Game Pass situation versus getting a couple free games a month is what I'm
right.
getting at.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
You're
yeah, yeah.
talking
Yeah, I'm
Game
talking.
Pass.
Yeah, full on. Yeah, yeah. That's what I'm talking about. And so, but I think so. But if they go a subscribe or a Game Pass type route, there's now an expectation that there'll be this feed of new games, and not just new garbage games. You can't just expect it like just sit there and bring back like old games from 5 years ago that no one played then to be like, oh look, now it's in VR. Like there'll be an expectation to bring the bigger stuff, the best stuff. Like it'll be there. If there's a Games Pass for VR, regardless of the platform, and Sony then announces Uncharted VR. Well, how come that's not on PSVR Game Pass? Like why
Well,
there's
okay, so it's an expectation thing. So
yeah 100%.
Microsoft carries Game Pass, I think, with their own exclusives. They do.
Yes.
Like they are those are tentpole titles, and
Yep.
everything else is just icing on the cake. There's a few exceptions there, especially with like all the acquisitions Microsoft's making. That gets even scarier to me about what that's going to do to the market and some of the perceived, like how I mean there's another thing I read in an article was that another side effect that Microsoft is seeing, which they don't like, is or at least other developers don't like, is that they announce their game and then the comments are like, is it coming to Game Pass, is it coming to Game Pass, I'll wait for Game Pass. That's the other thing that a lot of developers are complaining about, is that people are not buying games because they're waiting for it to come to Game Pass.
Well, Veraza
Like,
is bringing it up right now, which you've been dodging. I mentioned it, but Viveport, as far as the PC side of things, and their version of a subscription service, it exists. Obviously, Viveport totally exists. I actually haven't heard much about Viveport in the last little while. Like, no one's really talking about Viveport. So I don't really know much about it at this point. Like, is it still delivering on like new games and experiences? I honestly don't know.
I don't. I mean, I don't.
I'm
I
checking
only
it.
know
I'm checking Viveport's catalog right
I
now.
only know a handful of people that even have an HTC. Um, so I mean, while you're doing that, I just, to keep the conversation um a little more clear, I think that a Game Pass situation for VR, whether it be on Meta or on Sony or something that, say, like Steam offered, though that's very unlikely, is going to be could be great for bringing exposure to indie titles. People will try games. It's just like Netflix, you know, where I think it greatly benefits smaller titles that would never have a hard time finding an audience. They wouldn't do well in theaters. They would get lost on the rental shelves, like, but they can be pushed and curated, and people will take chances on those games. That I love the idea of. And I would support fully a streaming or a Game Pass type service that really celebrated indies, basically. Um, However, I actually do not think that necessarily big key AAA titles should go that route. I just don't think I don't think it's a good precedent to set in the industry. And I think that, me personally, I think that covers like my feeling around VR as a Game Pass. Now, going back to the monthly kind of paying, like we already do, on, say, on the PlayStation Network, you already pay that monthly fee. Again, it's like all it takes is a couple of games a year that you get for free that you want, and it kind of pays for itself. I also, again, like, I remember what Sony's online offering was before we started paying for it, and it was trash. And so if that's what it costs for them to keep it going, um, you know,
So
that
I'm
would be that would be good.
I'm looking at Viveport here. $13 a month. I'm assuming that's American.
How much? How much? Five?
$13 a month.
Oh, 13. Okay.
And I'm trying to find like the most popular games, like the newest games on there. It's got some like Phasmophobia, After the Fall. Like there's known games in this thing for sure. I can't find anything, at least right away, like anything, any new releases, like any Wanderers on there. It's still last year. New titles every month. My point being is I can't find anything new. Like all these games are at least a year or two old from what I'm seeing. Um, which does kind of bolster my argument of, like where's the new stuff? Like if Viveport's not getting the newest stuff out there, it's not saying it's not a viable option. There's a plethora of games to play that, on the PC side of things, that make this easily worth $12 a month. But like I said, I don't like. I'm looking at new releases, trying to find new releases rather, and I can't. It just doesn't seem to be like they get things are few and far between. Saints and Sinners is on here. Super hot. Like there's Kayak
Here's the
VR
thing.
Mirage. There you go.
I don't think, I really do not think. Again, I'm trying to take a step back from as a gamer, I just want everything. I don't want to spend a lot of money, and from like someone who just like loves the industry and wants it to flourish. From that standpoint, I don't think big titles should go to it day one, maybe a year later. But like, I think developers should have the chance to make as much profit as they can, because that's hard to come by these days in VR.
Ah,
And I think that, like, those titles should be able to, lift the industry and make all their money. But then, like, the titles that, say, just couldn't find their audience, smaller titles, indie titles, or titles like Saints and Sinners that has, had its run, I mean, ignoring the remasters, um for that to be available, like for those old, say, legacy titles to be available for people coming into VR, without having to spend, all these money up front. I like that idea. Now, back to this, what I think is more realistic is this monthly kind of get a couple free games included with your monthly subscription that you already pay for, like the PlayStation Network or whatever. It's I think Sony should look at a route that Nintendo did, actually. I mean, Nintendo's online offering is a joke. I mean, it's really odd the way they've managed. You need a phone, but
Yeah,
that's not what I'm talking about.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
what I do like is that their membership that they launched a few years ago is that the games that they were giving for free every month they were legacy titles. They were from the Nintendo, like the e-store or whatever the heck they called it when it was on the Wii U. I can't remember what they called it now, but it was like, it was like SNES games, it was N64 games, it
Hmm.
was,
Yep.
it was GameCube games. Um, I would love to see Sony do something like that, in the fact that we all are clamoring for some of those great legacy PSVR 1 titles. And again, like we've said many times here, you know, it's not as easy as flipping a switch. It would require developers to go back, spend the time, update the tracking, update the graphics, bring the resolution up, whatever it would be on a title by title basis. But, and maybe spend the time even in like doing some remaster on it and adding in haptics, whatever it would be for that game to bring it up to PSVR 2 um, quality that we hope that these titles would be. And so they were as good as we remembered them. If Sony, say, like, highlighted a couple or even just one game every month as part of PSVR Plus or PS Plus, they got a PSVR 1 classic brought over. Um, or like you had said, even if it was a PSVR specific membership that you could tack onto your account, and then you paid, I don't know, $3 or $4 or something a month or whatever, and you were guaranteed a couple of classics being brought over. That could be really cool. I don't know what that necessarily, how that would really price out and this and that, but I really like the idea.
Hmm. No, I agree. I mean, like I said, I would love for there to be a way to bring over some of these games, especially on the PSVR side, where, like I said, these games right now are just, they're just gone unless you have a PSVR 1 headset still floating around and love your move controllers. Like, the only way to play some of these games is with that very crappy tracking system. So it'd be awesome to see every game I've played. You're jumping from Saints and Sinners 1, going from the PSVR 1 to the PSVR 2 version of the game, and going from moves and everything else. Like, it's so much better to play on a modern VR headset, where some of these games could totally benefit from the new tech. So, and games like Gollum, I guess, would be a really good example of Sony exclusive, that just, I mean, no one, it bombed. I mean, thanks to a wonky release, thanks to really weird locomotion options, which they fixed. I thought
And
was,
development hell.
they
Like,
had development hell forever.
it didn't come out at the height of PSVR when it
No,
was
no, it was way after.
too. It was a
Um,
launch title, or it was a title that was mentioned at launch and
It was
shown.
mentioned at launch, but I guess if you follow the story, that trailer that they made, like that's all they had when you saw that trailer. That's literally, it was a concept trailer. That's what they had. So basically, like, the hype around PSVR got them the funding they needed to make the game, but everyone just thought the game was like coming soon, and then delays and everything else doesn't really matter. My point being, it's a good example of one of those games that should see the light of day on the PSVR 2, and something like a subscription service would maybe allow for that to happen, I guess. Because it's
Yeah. Well, because if you're a developer, all right, and like let's, I don't know, let's, any title. It doesn't matter what the title is. Let's just say, I don't know, Wipeout. Okay, and the team's not together. I mean, it was a small team that revisited that game in VR, anyways. But I think it was 5 people or something that was brought together. But it's like they're not together anymore, most likely. Not working on Wipeout, and the idea of doing a remaster and stuff, it might be kind of like, oh, that'd be great, but the money to get together. If Sony was able to have some funds because of this kind of initiative, where they were able to um, pay for that initial team to reform, and that was built into into the agreement, that that their payout would include them doing the upfront work to get it over. I just think that some form of that would be great if they could work that into some kind of a service. Um, the other thing that I wanted to mention when we talk about game passes, because a lot of people are still talking about that in chat right now, is as someone who uh loves to, like, I have people come over and I like to pull from the catalog of all my favorite VR games and kind of offer experiences in this, especially with VR, because it is very much like the greatest arcade system ever made in a lot of times when I have parties or friends and family over, is game passes are like Netflix, and they have agreements, they have license agreements that end. So
Mhm.
games disappear. It's not, I mean, that's always a risk with any digital game we buy, but really you are buying a long-term slash permanent um licensing agreement when you buy a game versus your game passes, your subscription services, you're not. You're not guaranteed anything. And I would hate to say have someone over and, a couple years from now and I've got this service. So I one of these games that was on the service say was like Switchback. So I didn't buy it. I had my service. And I go and now Switchback's just gone.
Right.
I can't I mean, it depends on the gamer, I guess. I can't handle that. I
Yeah,
can't handle doing
delisting in a digital age is definitely a real issue that, when it happens, it sucks. There's no way around it. It's absolutely terrible because, like I said, if you didn't buy it at that time, I mean, even going through, EA just announced they're delisting 3 of their Battlefield titles, 1943 and both the what's the 2 Xbox ones I'm now blanking on, Bad Company. They're removing them from all digital services. So if you don't own it, you don't get to play them. And but Bad Company's campaigns are totally worth playing even now. I mean, but they're gone. So if you didn't buy them before now, tough luck. And now that's just it. Like now you have to hunt down physical copies, which once again, that comes from a day when there was physical copies. VR now we're up to like what 2 games physically for the PSVR. We're Townsman and Star Wars comes out April 7th, I think, and physically. So you can't rely on that in any way, shape, or form. It definitely is an issue to consider, and it's one that people won't until it's too late. I think
well,
that's a big one.
and it is very different from what I'm suggesting, looking at more like, like the PS Plus type of service where you get a couple free games a month, because the way that works, like Wolveraza is saying, is that, like Viveport, as long as you're subscribing to the service, you have those games. That's how PlayStation Plus works when you get these games. As long as, I mean, with outside of extenuating circumstances,
Hmm.
if you're paying for the subscription service, you always have access to those games. But that's not the case with your game passes, or something like, I mean, game passes. I mean, really, the only real example of this, for the most part, is Xboxes, and the fact is titles leave there all the time, and I'm not happy with that. I knew, no way. I need to own these titles. I want to have my library that I know is on lockdown. Again, I go back to the fact that I like the idea of something like a Viveport, for people to experience a bunch of titles, especially titles that they might not necessarily try. That's awesome. It's good for VR, especially the way that, when we've always talked about how VR sometimes can just make genres you would never play exciting
Hmm.
and fun. And so it really lends itself to experimenting with titles like, like, what's this Electronaut thing? You play it, it could blow your mind. It's not a game that
Or
necessarily,
it might not.
not you, but you know what I'm saying? Like, that's a perfect
For sure.
example of a game that isn't like, it's hard to kind of explain to someone why it might be awesome. So some type of a Game Pass would really lend itself to that. But there's a really fine line, I think, between highlighting titles that don't have the exposure and just making it even harder for developers to make money
Yeah.
in this industry right now that's already a struggle.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see honestly how this whole Games Pass thing plays out because it just seems like stories are starting to come out now, like more and more in regards to how certain games have fared or how it's affected the game's sales or whatnot. So like, yeah, I'm really curious to see are these kind of stories one offs, or will there be more and more and more of this happening? Where maybe this wonderful, amazing Games Pass, which really has been wonderful and amazing since it came out, actually isn't so wonderful and amazing. And the last thing we want to see, especially, is less of a or less money going towards to developers. I mean, especially when it comes to VR, where we're already still clamoring for the bigger VR experiences. The idea of less money going to developers is just, that's not good. Not good at all. So that's the last thing we want. But at the same time, getting these games in the hands of more people when VR is still in its fledgling stages, even now, that sounds good. So it's this weird give take thing where like which one will give without taking too much.
Yeah.
Um,
My
it
example
really
would
is.
be my example would be, let's say there was a VR Game Pass right now, full on, like a Microsoft competitor. Everyone is going to want, say, like Saints and Sinners Retribution to be a day one Game Pass game. Of course they want that, and it's gonna, just like it is now in flat gaming, it's gonna be the first thing everybody asks. I
Yeah.
don't think that game should be on a Game Pass service. It doesn't need to be. Um, I mean, maybe the odd game to lift up a service, but I just don't want it to be the norm. It's like, I don't want to pay more money for it, but I also do not want to see a developer go under because we set a precedent in the VR industry that people should get all VR games for $7 or $10 a month. Like that us untitled VR gamers who are like, no, I don't want to spend money to play these games, and therefore developers start to just fold because they can make a go in this industry. I mean, it's already hard for them, and so that's, you said, it's a balance, especially for smaller developers.
Clayton Young brought up a really good point that I actually forgot about in that Pimax is letting developers pick and choose their own payout thing. And they're letting developers take 100% of their profits. I'm not sure exactly how that works as far as like Pimax's storefront and stuff goes, because I mean, Pimax to not make any money off the games doesn't do Pimax any favors. So and I don't know much more than that. I remember the story coming out, I believe, like a week or two ago about this. But basically, yeah, they're letting bring your game to our platform, and you can choose basically how much money you get for your for like how much profit you get, which is
Well,
awesome in theory, but like in practice, I just don't know.
yeah,
That's not sustainable in any way, shape, or
no,
form.
it's not sustainable. When I look at that, I immediately think Pimax is doing that to try to attract
Yes, 100%.
developers because no one's buying their headset. I mean, in the grand scheme of things, it's very elite,
Yeah,
and
well, not
they're
even
trying
buying
to
their headset.
attract.
No one's even like their games aren't even optimized for that headset. I think
True,
that's the big
that's
issue.
true.
I
Yeah,
mean, when you're
you're right.
dealing with a 180-degree field of view, and the games are just only built for like 130 max for the Valve, and it's like that's what they're pushing for. Is they basically need these games to be developed so the Pimax can show off what it can do. But I mean, like I said, that's not long term viable at all. Not to say it's still cool they're doing that. But to say it's like they're doing it for the developers, that's not the case at all. Um,
I Yeah, I just, bottom line, I mean, this idea, going back to the very original thing with Meta talking about wanting to possibly do a couple games a month. I mean, that's where this is actually an old story that just kind of became a topic that we were talking about again. And um, when you look at Meta's idea of bringing a couple games a month, I'm telling you right now, guys, I'm saying it right here. It was March 23rd. When the Quest 3 comes out, it will launch with a subscription online service. If you want to play online, you will pay a monthly fee, just like Gold, just like PlayStation Plus. I mean, if I'm Meta and I'm looking for revenue streams and I'm bleeding money and I'm trying to tell my board of directors, I'm Zuckerberg and I'm trying to convince them that VR uh, is sustainable, you better believe. I mean, it's like everyone's used to paying for online on their Nintendo, their Xbox, their
mhm.
PlayStation. It's kind of a no-brainer.
It does make
Um,
sense,
I
unfortunately.
mean, it gets complicated though. I mean, I guess if you like go onto the Rift side of things on the PC, and then it's like, well, then I'm just not going to buy this game. I'll buy it on Steam.
Yeah.
It gets a little complicated on there, but I mean, I'm gonna guess that I'm gonna guess that Meta is going to slowly try to get the Quest into its own isolated ecosystem.
I
Um,
would think so too.
where is like where the rules are different. I mean, we already see that when you're in the store. I mean, you either see one store or the other. So I feel like that's probably where it's going. I mean, so there's that. I think that's going to come. I think it makes a lot of sense. I think that they have enough titles in their library
Which is
to
also a
be able.
really good point as well, is that, like Sony doesn't, at least not their PSVR 2 library. If you
Yes,
factor in PSVR 1, that changes the
but
story, but
that
Meta does
becomes
have, yeah.
and that exactly. But then that becomes my big wish and my bucket list for PSVR 2 is I would love to see Sony leverage that old PSVR 1 market,
100%.
um, make people, there was obviously a lot of discontentment around people having to abandon their PSVR 1 library, but getting those titles over, again, probably costs money, and if Sony can somehow make that happen by, some kind of a subscription service or just offering it as part of the Plus thing. I also like the idea of a PSVR game or a PSVR 2 game, just a game for PSVR 2 showing up every month, with PS Plus, just like Vita used to. Because remember, it used to be
Yeah.
Vita used to be able to get one or two titles a month alongside, the PS3 titles or the PS4 titles, and they eventually dropped it. It's like, okay, we got enough games now on the PSVR 1 for sure that you could start dropping at least a PSVR 2 game, even if it is a remastered title, to the masses. And that would be great promotion that every single month people who had their PS Plus memberships saw that they were missing out on a free game they couldn't play because they didn't have a headset. Especially if they were some good games. Like, man, that Walking Dead game's free?
Yeah.
Oh, I gotta get a PSVR. Like, I've missed out on so, especially if they keep adding it to their library like I do every month. Even I don't play half the games that I get for free. I always add them to my library, so at least I have them. Um,
I mean to.
you know,
I've been really lazy with that, actually. I
but
canceled
that
my,
would be
yeah,
but that would be great though for someone who say like is still on the bubble of getting a PSVR 2, if they could go, well, I've got like 30 titles
totally.
in my
Totally.
library already. Like it is just there's so much that makes sense about that. But um
Uh,
again, that's why I said I feel like you almost have to talk about it in silos because like Sony's got some advantages and some limitations, whereas Meta's got some advantages and some limitations. And then there's the Wild West of PC, and I feel like that's just I don't know, that's a tough one. And HTC makes up such a small percentage of gamers, like of people of active gaming player bases, that Viveport I think is
well, Viport works.
really.
Viport works across other headsets.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, you can
I
get
am so out of the loop with
it doesn't
Viveport.
take much to get it to work with other headsets at all. um,
Great, that's
um,
awesome.
Speaking of subscriptions, assuming everyone in chat is subscribed to this channel, if you haven't, please do.
Oh, segue.
That'd be nice. So, with your free subscription to this channel, guys, if you're waiting for this PSVR 2 code for Retribution, you have like 10 seconds to like open that window up, log into your account, get it ready. I'm gonna put it on screen right now, so you gotta type it in yourself. I'll give you a little more time, but your Saints Sinners, Chapter 2, Retribution, PSVR 2, North American code will appear on the screen right. Oops, wrong button. Now. There you go, guys. Hopefully you can read that. It's pretty clear. Yeah, and then I'll throw in an EU code as well. I think there's probably one EU in chat, so it's like a guaranteed win. So way to stay up till like 4 in the morning over in the other side of the world because you get a code. And if not, and you're watching this later in the episode, then congrats to you as well. So yeah, hopefully that code's been redeemed.
And for those of you who want to pay for a subscription, we do have a Patreon. Guys, it's like a couple bucks a month if you want to support the channel. We don't really offer anything for that. It's just it helps us out with the channel. We do want to add some kind of a value offer there, but Ryan and I have just been
Time, man.
swamped.
Time
Yes, dear.
is, yep.
We don't want to overpromise, underdeliver, but those of you who are patron to us or have done super chats, we really appreciate it. It helps us pay for all these games that we review when we don't get them. So
Damn you, EAE. Damn you. The EU code's up there, guys, by the way. Yeah, we like to give back where we can on the chat. Even in Patreon, we've given away codes in the past. We will probably do that again sooner than later as well, just to kind of acknowledge you guys are helping support this channel. I know we don't really give a lot of love to our patrons as far as content goes. Um, that's why we do it here. That's why we thank you guys here. And if the channel gets huge and we can quit our jobs, then everything changes. But as of right now, unfortunately, we still have to live in the real world. Um, but yeah, I think that about covers it as far as, this is a very open conversation. There's no one side right or wrong here. And, as things play out in the flat world, that's very much going to determine what happens in the VR space. We'll see what Meta does. Like Chris said, I don't think he's wrong. I think it's a very, very good chance that Meta will drop this thing when the Quest 3 launches, just to kind of help boost sales. Hopefully, especially considering the Quest 3 sounds like it might be, under deliver and maybe too expensive for what it is based upon like early rumors. Who knows? Apple's coming out with their thing soon. Who knows what's going to happen there? It's a very interesting time for VR once again with all these new headsets coming out. And I am excited to see, all the successes and unfortunately all the fails, but hopefully people learn from these lessons and move on and we can build this VR space to be exactly what we want it to be. And in that whole process, get some PSVR 1 ports to PSVR 2 because I miss some of those games.
Yeah. Yep. I mean, I just going back to just to summarize, I guess, for my thoughts, it's like the I get the kind of push pull of like that tug of war, I guess, of wanting free shit or wanting to like not spend a lot and get a lot. Like there's, and but we're seeing it play out right now with like all these we're inundated with subscription services. I'm looking at mostly like the TV movie world, and everyone's got a subscription service, and they're all having issues. And I'm sorry, I'm reading chat here while I'm talking here, and they're all having issues trying to make money. So they're all cutting costs and they're all cutting content, and it's just I don't want to see gaming go down that path. Anything even closely resembling that. We're not there yet, but I don't know. I collect movies still, and the more subscription services that come out, the more I'm glad I collect movies, because when I want to go watch the 1989 Batman movie, I don't have to worry if anyone's got it. I just go and I grab it and I play it.
Yeah, I'm special.
And I mean, we haven't even gotten into the idea of streaming, because personally I think we're not there yet, at least not on the masses, as far as people having the speed of internet and routers in their home to get, for that to be a viable service necessarily
Yeah.
yet with VR, and latency and all that stuff. I know that there are services like that out there, but they're not, I don't think they're not really making huge waves yet. That's a different conversation, but I do like this idea that somehow games like that, I can think of so many games that have come out in the last 6 or 7 years on, like, say, the PSVR 1 or the PC or the Quest, that no one talks about anymore. Like lots and lots of hidden gems, and sometimes just great games that have just disappeared that no one talks about. Like, it would be, I don't know, it'd be really cool if like Sony, for a PSVR 1 game, like brought a remastered Eve
Rigs.
Valkyrie or Rigs, I was gonna say, or Battlezone,
Yeah.
or so, and I'm going far back for that stuff, but even like I the game's escaping me right now, so I'm not even gonna try. But there's just so many classic titles that
100%.
I would love to see brought over, and I really think the only way that's gonna happen for some of these is if Sony injects themselves into the process a bit. So who
Yeah.
knows? I don't know. At the end of the day, I would love some of these games, whether they be old and kind of like dead titles, or just titles that just didn't get the love that they probably should have. I'd love them to be able to get more exposure, and so that's where I like some of these services.
Agreed. Chris, I think we're just about done here.
Yeah, I think we do. Sorry for the late start today, guys.
Yep, my familiar responsibilities.
I know it's
Womp womp.
unacceptable.
I know, I'm sorry.
Unacceptable.
That's why next week you're watching my kid.
Ooh-ha. No. Nope. Not happening. Guys, thanks for tuning in. If you haven't, don't forget to hit the like button. That just really helps us. And subscribe if you aren't already. Support the Patreon. You know the deal. We appreciate everything you guys do. Again, special shout out to why am I having a hard time?
Salvador?
Salvador, thank you. Thank you, Salvador, for your super chat. You're always super Genesis. Genesis?
Super Genesis, yeah.
Sega! Generous. And we really appreciate that. So I think that's it. I don't really have anything else to say to you, Ryan.
No. It
Guys,
was definitely we've been talking about PSVR 2 every episode for so long that now that we've gotten off it, it almost feels weird to like not talk PSVR 2 specifically again. It's like the old format. What are we gonna talk about this week? I don't know.
I mean, there's things happening. I mean, we see that Pico's doing something.
No,
I
that
don't.
was all. That's all a bust, eh?
I know. I saw that.
Okay.
Yeah, I looked everywhere for it,
Yeah.
and I'm like,
No,
so I don't really know what's going on with that.
there was
it
an
bullshit?
accident. It was an accidental tweet that shouldn't have gone out. And basically,
Oh,
they were talking
but we
about their
know it's
booth.
coming.
They're talking about their booth at GDC, but made it sound like an actual announcement. So yeah, nothing. There's nothing. Way to go, Pico.
We'll see. VR. I mean, VR as a whole is the Wild West, and so like, I mean, just like there's a new PSVR 2 game coming out tomorrow. So, yay! I mean, we'll see what that looks like.
Yep, I agree. We will see that tomorrow.
Keep an eye on the channel, guys, because I'm hoping to offer some kind of coverage for you guys before you decide to go buy it. It is kind of a quick drop. That's never a good sign. And then Ryan's going to have a review out for Vertigo next week. I have a review dropping tomorrow finally for Resident Evil 8. Spoiler alert, it's awesome. And yeah, that's kind of a snapshot of the next few days here coming up. So Ryan, I'm done with you.
I'm done with you, Chris.
Bye.
Bye.